Great. So the broadcast is live. Hello and assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to Remote Fest. We're here for another really exciting session. Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and the cyber threat landscape in 2022. It's incredibly important. It's what has CEOs and boards worried all over the world. It directly affects the top line of the company and it's something that is very prevalent and evolving in today's world. So I'm also really excited to introduce our guest for today. We have Nami Mufti with us, who is a cybersecurity professional with over 22 years of experience in the field of cybersecurity in financial service companies and tech companies. He is currently serving as head of security for SWVL, and prior to this, he was head of security and productivity engineering at Spotify, based in New York, driving efforts to build customer-focused cybersecurity solutions for the enterprise. Nami, we're very happy to have you. Thank you so very much for your time. Let's jump right in. So, while ransomware attacks have increased rapidly in 2021 than in the previous 2 years, the overall complexity of these attacks has also increased significantly, right? So most attacks have been known to evade some established endpoint protection tools, and there's been a 125% increase in all threat types combined. So this diverse range of threats requires organizations to remain hyper vigilant to this, like I said, ever evolving nature of attacks. So Nami, I think we'll jump right into the first question, and I'll hand over the mic to you. So it is said that people, processes, and technology have to work together in order to ensure system security, right? One cannot function without the other, and in today's day and age, it is not the responsibility of the tech team anymore to guarantee the security of the system. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that and on the different roles of the different parts of each organization in ensuring a fully secure system. Nami, can you hear me? Hiba, if you could confirm in the chat if you can hear me. Hello? Okay, we can't hear Nami. Okay, great. Nami's left. That's perfectly all right. We'll
Yeah,
wait for a few more
let's
seconds.
try this
Great.
again. Sorry about
Uh,
that. I think I got a
no
bad
worries at all.
connection here.
No worries at all.
Uh,
Yeah.
s- so I think I got part of that question, but I think what you were asking was people, process, and technology working together in today's cybersecurity ecosystem. So, firstly, I'd like to start with look, it's been a well known fact, and I think that's one of the things that security professionals always try to tell everybody is security is everybody's responsibility because security is a distributed problem. So, everybody has to do their part. That's always been an established principle because the problem with security is you can have a central security organization, but I'm trying to secure your resources. I don't understand your resources, so I need your help to do that. There is really nothing security can do by themselves. So it is a team sport. And now in today's world, right, it is even more important because the world has shifted. We've gone from the days of very structured, rigid uh, data centers where you had a central team that managed infrastructure, and then they put restrictions on you. Where we live in a DevOps world, we have a cloud infrastructure where anyone can basically build a data center at scale within minutes. The whole promise of the cloud is to allow you to be really fast. So you have to move away from your old archaic ways where you put a lot of restrictions on people and say, look, you can only do these certain things, and you have to put in a request, and this is how we do it. Plus perimeters have eroded. There is no boundaries anymore. There used to be a data center where everybody's resources used to live with a very defined boundary, and there was a roadblock that was put for everybody to get in and out of that network. That doesn't exist anymore. So we have federated all those responsibilities in order to move fast, and it's a good place to be. But for this ecosystem to work, everybody must do their part. So the whole concept of security being everybody's responsibility is now more important than ever, because in an organization everybody is responsible for security. So you can start at at the board. The board of any organization is responsible for, they have accountability. They should oversee the program. They should say, look, it's funded, it's important. They should ask questions, and they should be knowledgeable about what's going on. Then you have senior management. They're the ones who set direction for the organization. As the head of security, I can give a lot of advice and input, but I need them to agree and need them to prioritize those things within their teams and make sure they have capacity to execute them.
Yeah.
Then you look at every engineer and every software engineer. It is their responsibility to build good code, build secure code. As a security organization, I can give you the tools to do that. But at the end of the day, you have to execute that on yourself. Like, the better code you build, the less tech that you have on the other end that you have to fix. So
Yeah.
everybody has a responsibility. You even take it to uh, an average business user, doesn't even build code, they're doing marketing, but they have access to data. They have to be responsible about securing that data. In daily lives, like one of the biggest, you talked about ransomware. Like, the one of the biggest threat vector is still phishing emails,
Yeah.
making sure you don't click on links that are suspicious, right? You don't actually open files that you don't know where they came from, or if they're not a trusted source. There's a lot of technology out there, but no security technology is bulletproof, right? There is always gaps, and malicious actors are one step ahead of you. There always will be, because there's one of us, there's a million of them, and they're very smart. They're extremely smart, right? So we can put in all the controls and all the tools, and you still need to make sure that you're exercising due diligence. There is no way to secure anything completely. The only way to secure anything completely is turn off your computer, drill a hole in your hard drive,
Cool.
put it in a ditch, and cover it in cement. The problem with that is it's pretty much useless at that time, and you can't do anything. So inherently, everything you do is risky. So you have to make sure that you manage. It's a matter of risk management, not risk avoidance, and just being very smart about the decisions you make.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned phishing, right? And because of the pandemic and because of everybody going to a remote or at least a hybrid working model, phishing scams have also gone up hugely, right? Because penetrating somebody's home internet network is much, much simpler, right? And people, most of them aren't
Yeah.
even aware of how you mentioned not clicking on suspicious links. Most people aren't really even aware of that, right? So I believe there's a fair bit of education and upskilling that's also required. So I think since we're talking about the pandemic, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how the pandemic has evolved the cyber threat landscape, how that
So
has
yeah,
changed things up.
the pandemic was very, very interesting. So when the pandemic hit, I was the head of security at Spotify, and it was an interesting time because as soon as the pandemic hit, Spotify was not a distributed first organization. It was very big on squads being together, coming to the office and working together. There was no remote work. And all of a sudden, this whole organization that was not equipped to be distributed or remote, everybody was working remotely, right? So, one, expectations were very, very different. the places we were in were just not equipped for people to be working at home. So I think statistics, if you look at statistics when the pandemic hit, cyber threat activity went up approximately 400%.
Yeah.
Personal experience, I saw that. That's what I saw, and I experienced that at Spotify at that time. And we were just managing instance ongoing. We were seeing so much cyber activity, whether that was phishing, whether that was ransomware attacks, whether that was just general hacking. And I think the reason for that was because there was two main reasons. And look, I was in the US market at that time, so there was two main reasons at that time. One was it was an opportunistic market because they knew that because of the pandemic, people were a little shooken up. They were working, they were out of their element, they were not in their offices with their general protections. They were working differently, which leads to errors, and people were already
Yeah.
struggling. That was one. The other one was, which was very interesting in the US at that time, was the political climate. We were going through an election. It was a very highly contested election. There was a whole insurrection. There was were politically charged. There were nation states at work. So it was a great time. So throughout 2020, we saw a huge rise in cyber activity. And I will still tell you, ransomware is probably the number one thing that keeps me up at night, just because it's just so easy and it happens so much. So we saw that lift. It did go back to normal levels in 2021 because people have adapted. The election moved behind us, but it just shows you that every opportunity somebody can get, they will take that to start using that to their advantage. And I think I'm glad that that did not become the new norm, because it's exhausting, but it's still there, and we're still going to see that. And look, these kind of attacks, these kind of threats are still extremely successful. Phishing, like, of all things, it is one of the simplest attacks, and we do a lot of education and awareness about it, but it still works because you can hit somebody over 1 million times. You just need that one individual to click that bad link once. So the pandemic was really, really interesting. And it has changed. Look, it has also changed the way we work. We have gone remote. Companies that were not remote have gone to a distributed way of working. So that also means that you have to start rethinking the way you build your controls, the way you build your capabilities. And there is a time that's going to be needed for everybody to make those investments to do this right. Because again, as a as somebody in security who's has been in it for 20 years, I've seen that shift being no, you can't do this, to yes, you can do this, here's how we can do it securely. So you can't just put up roadblocks, you cannot slow things down, because if you're not moving forward, you're basically dying, and you have to really innovate fast and move fast. So it has changed the way we work. Like, I think the pandemic has changed our habits, it has changed the way we work, it's changed the needs of everybody, and we have to adapt. So I think we're still in the phase of figuring that out. I think we've made strides towards it. I think we're going to have a little more difficult time, because as people come back to work, right, there are some people who are going to come back to work, some people who are still going to stay remote. When everybody was remote, everybody was on the same playing field. But now we have to relearn how to work in a distributed manner. There are some companies that do that really well because they've been doing that really well. Others are going to have to learn. But I think this is the world that we live in, and we have to build towards that. We have to adapt towards that.
Absolutely.
It's a
We were
borderless
all,
world.
yeah, we were all sort of shoved into what is now the new normal, and especially countries like Pakistan maybe would not have evolved this much, or adapted this much technology in 20 years that it did in the 2 years of the pandemic. So that's very, very interesting. So speaking about 2021, the world had a 300% increase in something called software supply chain attacks, right? So I would like to know what they are, right, and how they work, and what can engineers who are building tools, what can they do to protect themselves against such attacks?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up this topic, because I think right after phishing and ransomware, I think this is the next big problem that we have. Look, we live in open integrated world now, right? Open source software is used a lot, whether it's built for building products within organizations or even in commercial products that we buy. There's a lot of open source. The beauty of open source is anybody can contribute to it, anybody can build it, it's available widely, different types of licenses. But the downside of it is that it can be manipulated a lot too. So the whole idea of software supply chain is like inserting malicious packages into any software that you use, right? It's a little more difficult if you're using a commercial off the shelf product that you buy from some vendor, because they're going to have more controls, and they control their uh, their environment, and they have good controls to protect it, even though it still does happen. Let's uh,
Hmm.
there are cases of that happening as well, because even those software vendors use open source packages. So the idea being, because it's so widely used and available, it's quite easy for malicious users to insert malicious software packages and malware within that ecosystem. So whether that it can be because of dependency confusion, it could be you're just downloading packages from the wrong place. There's a lot of ways you can do that, but it is because it's such an open world, and anybody can contribute. It becomes a challenge to control what is being contributed and if those packages are right. Same thing in the development world, in the engineering world, right? One of the things that
Yeah.
I've experienced and I've been working on with an organization also is dependency confusion, right? So when you have open source packages, you have dependencies, and there are new versions that are released. If you are not validating the source of those updates and that dependencies, then you could be getting a malicious package and inserting it into your software, and you would just never know. So as a software engineer, one, validate where you're getting the packages from. As an organization, you could think about creating your own software store where you validate and test those packages and then make them available to your engineers. Adds a little bit friction, so you have to think about that. uh, sign your sign your code, sign your packages, test it appropriately. But it is a big problem. It is something that is definitely top of mind in the industry. There is an organization called OpenSSF, which is Open Source Software Foundation, and it's really well funded by some big organizations like Google and Apple, and uh, they are working towards uh, solving this at scale for everybody. Which, uh, if folks on this call are interested, you should definitely take a look. But I think it is definitely something that needs a little bit of attention, because look, the world is going more open source. We are going to use, I think that's what sparks innovation, and I think it's a great place to be. But it is definitely going to be a bigger and bigger problem.
Great. I had more questions. I'm sure the audience did as well, but we're unfortunately out of time. Nami, thank you so very much for your
I,
time.
look, I will say one thing before we wrap up. I've been in
Mhm.
security for 22 years. I think one of the biggest things the security cybersecurity field is lacking is good engineers, because security has always been a look. We buy a product, we deploy it, and it works for us. But the world has moved past that. So look, if you're engineering, become a good software engineer, and then come to security. I think that will really help the security ecosystem.
Any advice for people entering, engineers entering data security in 2022? I'm sorry, my team will kill me for asking this question, but please, very quickly, if you
Look,
could
so
do that.
not data. If you're a data engineer, security to me is a data problem. Security needs more data engineers. Security needs more software engineers. One of the biggest things that I've had a challenge with is when I hire people to do AppSec, and I ask them, "Have you ever been a software developer?" And they're like, "No, we've been doing AppSec." I'm like, "Then how do you understand the problems of a software engineer and solve them in a way that will actually be meaningful to them?" You have to live that life to know what their problems are. Otherwise,
Got it.
security tends to keep on putting just a bunch of roadblocks, and that doesn't work. So look, yes, be a software engineer. T-shaped engineers are great.
Great.
Yeah,
Fantastic, Nami. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. It was absolutely wonderful talking to you. I hope to host you once again, and I hope to be speaking to you again very, very soon. We'll be in touch with you.
would love
So
to do that.
thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for your time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.